75 years ago, a great man known as the Reverend W.R.G. created a story called The Three Railway Engines. It was a massive hit, and a little while later, he created his most popular character yet, Thomas the Tank Engine. After that, a lady named Britt Outcroft bought the rights to Thomas the Tank Engine to make a TV series. After that, Thomas got bigger than ever. Toys, of course a TV show, books, and so much more. Thomas has been around for 70 years. Well, the book series anyways. The character, while yes, has been around for 70 years, but his big engines have been around for a tiny bit longer. But nonetheless, this year, Thomas and his friends are celebrating 75 years of friendship and just awesomeness. And that's what the fans are celebrating too. Hey everyone, it's the Underground here. I've been a Thomas fan since I was 3, so 2002. I've been a fan for many years, and I'm still a fan today. May not like where the show's going, but I still love it. To celebrate Thomas and his friend's 75th anniversary, I've gone together with some of my personal YouTube friends who are Thomas fans, and we have gone together to create this video. If you know the 75, well, actually I should say 10-year anniversary DVD, the 10 years of Thomas and Friends, that's basically what this is. Me and a bunch of my friends got together and we chose, well, I and my friend Spider-Fan helped me out. We went through episodes and when it came to the final decision, I thought on which ones would be the best. Thanks again to Spider-Fan. He helped pick some of the episodes because I couldn't think of all of them. But it was my final decision on which episode was best. And while there was one or two episodes I would have preferred, for what my friends were able to do, I really appreciate it. And some of these episodes are definitely special. So what is going to happen is, just like 10 years of Thomas and Friends, each episode is going to be played out, and my friends are going to also have in between segments when they say why they like the characters, what's their special episode, favorite episode, and so on and so forth. This is a big deal, and while it's nothing spectacular, me and a lot of my friends, or just people in the fandom, have gone together to make this awesome video, and it's been awesome, and I look forward to seeing where Thomas goes in the future. And it's basically a tribute to Thomas, but also the fans as well. So come with me and a lot of my friends, because we are going on a train ride to celebrate the 75 years of friendship, love, and the little blue tank engine that started it all. Welcome to the 75-year anniversary of Thomas and Friends, and welcome to Sodor's Best Stories. Now, for this episode, I thought it would be fun to show one episode from the series that is a nice tribute to the series in general. Characters, music, story, regardless. And it's not that I couldn't decide if I wanted to have someone remake the episode or if I wanted to choose the episode itself. But I thought for a nice tribute to the series, I think it'd be fine to show this episode. With that said, this story is about a tender engine who goes to an unknown part of Sodor, or the mainland if I'm correct, I haven't seen the episode in a while, and finds a certain green engine and his brake van and saves them from scrap.
One day, Edward was talking to Trevor when Douglas steamed by. He was pulling a train of heavy coal cars. "Come on, Edward. Stop gossiping in the sun when there is work to be done." Later, Edward spoke to Douglas. "Trevor and I are old friends, and you and he have a lot in common, too." "We do? quizzed Douglas. And what would that be? Scrap, said Edward quietly. Douglas gasped. Don't mention that word. It makes me wheels wobble. It does the same to Trevor, replied Edward. He was being sent to the scrapyard, but the vicar and I saved him, and now he's really useful again. Even so, Sir Topham Hatt certainly does need another steam engine here. Aye, he does, and quickly. That night, Douglas was still working. He had taken the midnight goods train to a station at a faraway part of the island where only the diesels work. He was just shunting, ready for his return journey, when... That sounds like a steam engine, he thought. The hiss came again. Who's there? Asked Douglas. A whisper came. Are you Sir Topham Hatt's engine? Aye, I'm proud of it. Well, I'm Oliver, and I'm with my brake van towed. We've run out of coal and have no more steam. But what you doing? Escaping. From what? Scrap. Douglas shivered. Then he remembered Edward's story about saving Trevor. I'll be glad to help you. It'll have to look, though, as if you're ready for scrap and I'm taking you away. Their drivers and firemen agreed to help, too. Everyone worked fast. No time to turn round. I'll run tender first. Come on. But before they could clear the station, they were stopped. Aha, called a foreman. A Great Western engine and a brake van, too. You can't take these. Aye, but they're all for us, said Douglas's driver. See for yourself. The foreman looked all over Oliver. Seems in order. Right away, guard. That was a near thing. We've had worse, replied Oliver, and they forged ahead. It was daylight when their journey ended. We're home, cried Douglas. Shh, said his driver. There are the works. We'll find a place for Oliver. Oliver said goodbye and thank you, and Douglas puffed away. The next day, Douglas told the other engines all about Oliver. Sir Topham Hatt will have to know, said James. Douglas should tell him at once, added Gordon. Well, here he is, said a voice. Now, what's this all about? Beg pardon, sir, but we do need another engine. Yes, sir, ventured Gordon. A steam engine, sir. Well, unless one is saved from scrap, there's little hope. But, sir, one has. Yes, indeed. And thanks to you, Douglas, he is now at our works. Oliver is just what we need for Duck's branch line. Everyone cheered. Now, Oliver and Toad are mended and painted in full Great Western colors. Duck and Oliver are happy on their branch line. The others laughed at first and called it the Little Western. Duck and Oliver were delighted, and so the Little Western it will always be.
When I was a kid, there were a lot of things I was into, Dora, Teletubbies, and so on and so forth. But somehow Tom's interested me. I honestly can't describe what it was. Like, the music was amazing, the stories were great, and Thomas was just cool as well. I always had a fascination with things that weren't actually alive, like talking trains, talking cars, toys, and so on and so forth. And seeing these animate objects come to life was so fascinating to me. It's really an imaginative thing. While I never really read the books, how do I say this? I got into the series by a certain episode, and that was James Goes Buzz Buzz. Well, I can't be for certain that's the episode I first watched, but to my knowledge, that's what I remember watching. I remember being really colorful. I remember a lot of the narration, and just a really fun episode in general. And it gets you introduced to Soto. Like, you meet a lot of the characters, you hear a lot of the music, and it's a nice, simple story. And I really liked that. Now, when it comes to my favorite song, there's so many to choose from. Like, the Magic Road soundtrack in general is great. But if I had to pick one, if it's not Night Train, it's the I'd probably have to say with what is it? The Magic Road version of Useful Engine, just a catchy tune. But I would say Night Train is my favorite. I've loved it as a kid. It's my favorite song. And while I can't sing it perfectly, I do love it in general. Now, my favorite character, as much as I love Thomas, I'm going to have to say Diesel 10. Like, he has a great personality. He's funny as can be. Neil Crone does a great job playing him. Or just the cast that play him in general. Whoever plays him does a great job. Even people in the fandom who do great voice impressions, everyone I've listened to has always done a great job with Diesel 10. And Pinchy, he's just amazing. Neil Crone came up with Pinchy, and I just love it. It's a really cool idea. What else exactly? Yeah, that's really about it about Diesel 10. I just love the character. Now, what does Thomas mean to me? Well, it's hard to say, because there's a lot of characters that mean a lot to me. Stitch is my favorite Disney character. Fluttershy is my favorite My Little Pony character. Like, a lot of characters can mean to you. I mean, something special. But Thomas, though, there's been a lot of TV shows I've loved. But Thomas has always been there for me. Like, since I was 3 till 21, which is the age I am now, I've known Thomas. Well, Thomas has been a part of my life for many, many years. And it probably still will be today. Like, even when I couldn't collect toys anymore, I still watch the show and I would love it. Like, I can look back at older seasons and kind of cringe and say, "Oh, this wasn't as good," like the CGI stuff, anyways. But I can still enjoy it. Like, when it comes to a lot of bad specials, like, for example, I don't like the other Diesels, but I do get enjoyment from it. Like, there's a lot of CGI episodes I actually think are mediocre, but I still enjoy. Like, there's a lot. Tom's is one of those things that, even when it comes to opinions and criticalness, I can still enjoy even if it's bad. Like, there's only been a handful of episodes I've legit hated. So, when it comes what Thomas means to me, he's he's basically been a part of my family. Like, he's been a part of my life since I was 3. And he may be a fictional character. Yeah, he may just be a character from a book and a TV show. But he's that character that I've watched for so many years, and a character I've loved for so many years. And I don't know what's in his future, but after watching The Royal Engine, I have some hopes. And seeing for what he's taught me, and for how big a part he's been in my life, like, every time I'm scared, like, even if I'm in the dark and I know I'm fine, I'll sometimes say to myself, little engines can do big things. Or sometimes I'll repeat those lines that Percy says through the Magic Railroad.
I am brave. I am brave. Thomas says I'm brave, so I'm brave. Oh, it's not easy being brave.
It sounds silly, I know, but it's just made that much of an impact on me. And Thomas started my YouTube channel. Thomas was some of the first few songs I ever got to sing. Useful Engine was the very first song I knew all the lyrics to, besides Only God Knows Why from Kid Rock. Thomas has been an extremely big part of my life, and I honestly cannot describe how much he means to me as a character and how much I love him. It just goes to show there's just a fictional character can do so much for a person. And I just love him. But with that said, let's get to the next episode. And if you're a fan of the twins, I think you'll like this one.
Duck, the Great Western engine, worked hard in the yard at the big station. Sometimes he pulled coaches. Sometimes he pushed freight cars, but whatever the work, Duck got the job done without fuss. One day, Duck was resting in the shed when Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "Your work in the yard has been good. Would you like to have a branch line for your own?" "Yes, please, sir," replied Duck. So Duck took charge of his new branch line. The responsibility delighted him. The line runs along the coast by sandy beaches till it meets a port where big ships come in. Duck enjoyed exploring every curve and corner of the line. Sea breezes swirled his smoke high into the air, and his green paint glistened in the sunlight. "This is just like being on holiday," he puffed. "Well, you know what they say," laughed his driver. "A change is as good as a rest." Soon, Duck was busier than ever. Sir Topham Hatt was building a new station at the port. Duck pulled the heavy freight cars wherever they were needed. Bertie looked after Duck's passengers, and the other engines helped too, but the work took a long time. Noise and dust filled the air. "Don't worry," whistled Toby. "The station's nearly finished." "And on time, too," said Duck thankfully. Duck felt his responsibility deeply and talked endlessly about it. "You don't understand, Donald, how much Sir Topham Hatt relies on me." "Ach, aye," muttered Donald sleepily. "I'm Great Western, and I—" "Quack, quack, quack." "What?" "Ye heard? Quack, quack, ye go. Sounds like ye'd an egg laid. Now wheesht and let an engine sleep." "Quack yourself," said Duck indignantly. Later, he spoke to his driver. "Donald says I quack, as if I'd laid an egg." "Quack, do you?" pondered his fireman. He whispered something to Duck and his driver. They were going to play a joke on Donald and pay him back for teasing Duck. The engines were busy for the rest of the day, and nothing more was said. Not even a quack. But when at last Donald was asleep, Duck's driver and fireman popped something into his water tank. Next morning, when Donald stopped for water, he found that he had an unexpected passenger aboard. A small white duckling popped out of his water tank. "Now, who's behind this?" laughed Donald. The duckling was tame. She shared the fireman's sandwiches and rode in the tender. The other engines enjoyed teasing Donald about her. Presently, she grew tired of traveling and hopped off at a station, and there she stayed. That night, Donald's driver and fireman got busy, and in the morning, when Duck's crew arrived to look him over, they laughed and laughed. "Look, Duck, look what's under your bunker. It's a nest box with an egg in it." Donald opened a sleepy eye. Well, 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 ye must have laid it in the night, Duck, all unbeknownst." Then Duck laughed too. "You win, Donald. It'd take a clever engine to get the better of you." There's a pond near the duckling station. Here she often swims and welcomes the trains as they pass by. The station master calls her Dilly, but to everyone else, she is always Donald's Duck. Duck and Percy enjoy their work at the harbor, pulling and pushing cars full of cargo to and from the quay. But one morning, the engines were exhausted. The harbor was busier than ever. Sir Topham Hatt promised that another engine would be found to help them. Huh, it's about time, said Percy. I ache so much I can hardly get my wheels to move, agreed Duck. They waited for the engine to arrive. It came as a shock when he did. Good morning, squirmed Diesel in his oily voice. The two engines had not worked with Diesel for a long time. What are you doing here? Gasped Duck. Your worthy top, Sir Topham Hatt sent me. I hope you are pleased to see me again. I am to shunt some dreadfully tiresome cars. Shunt where? Said Percy suspiciously. Where? Why, from here to there, purred Diesel, and then again from there to here. Easy, isn't it? With that, Diesel, as if to make himself quite clear, bumped some cars hard. Oh! Screamed the cars. Grrr! Growled Diesel. Percy and Duck were horrified. They did not trust Diesel at all. They refused to work and would not leave their shed. Sir Topham Hatt was enjoying his tea and iced bun when the telephone rang. So there's trouble in the harbor yard? I'll be there right away. Diesel was working loudly and alone. Cargo lay on the quay. Ships and passengers were delayed. Everyone was complaining about Sir Topham Hatt's railway. Percy and Duck were sulking in their shed. What's all this? Demanded Sir Topham Hatt. We're on strike, sir, said Percy nervously. Yes, added Duck. Beg pardon, sir, but we won't work with Diesel, sir. You said you sent him packing, sir. I have to give Diesel a second chance, replied Sir Topham Hatt. I'm trying to help you by bringing Diesel here. Now you must help me. He was the only engine available. Percy and Duck went sadly back to work. Next morning, things were no better. Diesel's driver had not put his brakes on properly, and Diesel started to move. He went bump straight into Percy. Wake up there, Percy, scowled Diesel. You have work to do. He didn't even say he was sorry to Percy. Later, Diesel bumped the cars so hard that the loads went everywhere. What will Sir Topham Hatt say? Gasped Percy. He won't like it, said Duck. So who's going to tell him, I wonder? Two goody-goody tattletales like you, I suppose? Percy and Duck did not want to be tattletales, so they said nothing. Diesel, thinking he could get away with his bad behavior, was ruder than ever. Next day, he was shunting freight cars full of china clay. He banged the cars hard into the buffers, but the buffers weren't secure. The silly cars were sunk. Sir Topham Hatt heard the news. The cars were hoisted safely from the sea, but the clay was lost. Sir Topham Hatt spoke severely to Diesel. The harbor master has told me everything. Things worked much better here before you arrived. I shall not be inviting you back. Now, Duck and Percy, I hope you won't mind having to handle the work by yourselves again. Oh, no, sir. Yes, please, sir, replied the engines. Whistling cheerfully, they puffed back to work, while Diesel sulked slowly away.
Hi guys, Brian Hugo here, and today I'll be answering a few questions about Thomas and Friends. First of all, my favorite character is Dieselton. He was first introduced in Thompson Magic Railroad, and it's pretty cool. Thompson Magic Railroad is probably one of my favorite movies, along with The Great Discovery, Sodor's Legend of Lost Treasure, and Hero of the Rails. My favorite episode is The Flying Kipper. And then my favorite song is don't judge a book by its cover, because it has a good meaning. It's a good meaning. And then Thomas and Friends means a lot to me. I watched the show ever since I was a kid, and I still do. And that's about it.
It had been raining hard for weeks. Toby was feeling miserable. Everywhere was wet, wet, wet. His branch line runs through a village. The water in the river had risen with the rain. Only the Great Wall, known as a dam, was stopping the water from overflowing. Percy arrived just as Toby was about to inspect the dam for any damage. "Driver tells me it may be dangerous up there." "Please be careful, Toby," said Percy. "I'll try," replied Toby bravely. Percy watched anxiously as Toby trundled away. His journey took him over a wooden bridge at the end of the village. The river surged dangerously beneath it. Harold the helicopter was inspecting the dam as Toby arrived. "Be brave, Toby," called his driver. "We have to cross to the other side." The dam did not look safe at all. Toby was very worried. Soon he knew why. "The dam's breaking up. We must warn everyone." Toby shunted back as fast as his wheels would let him. Percy was waiting anxiously for Toby by the bridge. The river had risen so high that the bridge was in danger of collapsing. "The dam's breaking up. We must find high ground," shouted Toby's driver. "Your only chance is to cross the bridge," called Percy. "It doesn't look safe to me," wailed Toby. "It's our only chance," said his driver. "If the dam breaks, we'll be done for." Toby was halfway across the bridge when disaster struck. "Help!" called Toby. "We'll follow him on our line. It meets the river further down." As Toby floated helplessly on the floodwaters, they passed a sign that made them shudder. "Beware the waterfall. If we go over that waterfall, we're doomed." Then they saw Harold, who swooped low and shouted urgently to them. "We're going to drop a rope to you. Attach it to yourself. Quickly now." And they did, to one of Toby's buffers. Just then Percy arrived. Harold flew over to him. "Catch the rope and pull Toby to safety," he called. Toby was safe at last. When the floods were over and the dam mended, the villagers had a big party for Toby, hosted by Sir Topham Hatt. "You were very brave, Toby." "Thanks to Harold." "I could never have been so brave, Toby." "Oh, I'm sure you would be, but you never know till you've tried." Percy rather hoped he'd never have to. Every summer, the island of Sodor is very busy. Holidaymakers love to sightsee, and when the weather is fine, there is no better place to visit. Some people like to go to the mountains. Others like the valleys. Children love the seaside. One morning, Thomas was puffing along the line that runs by the coast. His two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle, were packed with children going to the beach. Everyone was happy. Percy was taking some freight cars to the harbor. "Hello, Thomas. You look cheerful. I wish I could take children today instead of freight cars." "They're the Vicar's Sunday School," explained Thomas. "I'm busy this evening, but the station master says I can ask you to take the children home." "Of course I will," promised Percy. Later, Percy saw Harold. "Sorry, Percy. Can't talk. I'm on high alert." "Why?" "Bad weather's due. My help's always needed." "Mind how you go, Percy." "Huh," huffed Percy. "As long as I've got rails to run on, I can go anywhere in any weather anyhow. Goodbye." "Be careful," warned Edward. "There's a storm coming." A promise is a promise, thought Percy, no matter what the weather. The children had a lovely day, but by tea time, dark clouds loomed ahead. Annie and Clarabelle were glad when Percy arrived. He was just in time. The rain streamed down Percy's boiler. Ugh, he shivered and thought of his nice dry shed. Percy struggled on past coastal villages and into the countryside. The river was rising fast. I wish I could see, complained Percy as he battled against the rain. More trouble lay ahead. "Oh," hissed Percy, "the water is sloshing my fire." Percy's driver and fireman had to find some more firewood. "I'll have some of your floorboards, please," said the fireman to the conductor. "I only swept the floor this morning," grumbled the conductor, but he still helped. Soon Percy's fire was burning well. He felt warm and comfortable again. Then he saw Harold. "Oh dear," thought Percy, "Harold's come to laugh at me." Something thudded onto Percy's boiler. "Ow!" exclaimed Percy. He needn't throw things. "It's a parachute," laughed his driver. "Harold's dropping hot drinks for us." "Thank you, Harold," whistled Percy. "Good to be of service," replied Harold and buzzed away. The water lapped Percy's wheels. Percy was losing steam again, but he plunged bravely on. "I promised," he panted. "I promised." He made one more big effort, and at last, exhausted but triumphant, he brought the train home. "Well done, Percy," cheered Thomas. "You kept your promise, despite everything." Sir Topham had arrived in Harold. First he thanked the men, then Percy. "Harold told me you were a wizard. He said he can beat you at some things, but not at being a submarine. I don't know what you two get up to sometimes, but I do know that you're a really useful engine." "Oh, sir," whispered Percy happily.
Trevor, the traction engine, was enjoying his work in the vicarage orchard. Birds were singing and apples were ripening on the trees. It was a lovely day. "Hello, Trevor," said James. "You look as bright and cheerful as my red paint." "Oh, I am," replied Trevor. "What's that noise?" asked James. "It's the bees," laughed Trevor. "They're all in these boxy things called beehives. I'm taking them to the station. The vicar says his bees make good honey and is giving some of them to his friends. Just then, Boko, the diesel engine, hummed in. Take care, you two. Don't make the bees angry. They might sting you. James didn't like being told what to do by a diesel, and he buzzed away. Goodbye, Trevor, called Boko, and set off to see Duck at the next station. Bill and Ben, the tank engine twins, were busy arranging trucks, but they scampered off when they saw Boko. I remember the first time I met those two, laughed Boko. They nearly made my eyes pop out. Edward soon put a stop to their games. Edward is the only one who can keep Bill and Ben in order, chuckled Duck. I sometimes call them the bees. A good name, replied Boko. They're terrors when they start buzzing around. James bustled in. What's that, Duck? He snorted. Are you afraid of bees? They're only insects after all, so don't let that buzzbox diesel tell you different. His name is Boko, and he didn't we. I wouldn't care, interrupted James. If hundreds were swarming around, I'd just blow smoke and make them buzz off. Buzz, 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 retorted Duck. The next morning, James arrived at the station to collect his coaches. The passengers were excited and keen to get on board. The platform was crowded, and the porter was in a hurry. Mind your backs, he shouted. Then there was trouble. The beehive fell and broke open. The station cleared like magic. James heard a familiar buzzing. The bees were too cold to be cross, so they buzzed around the fireman hoping he'd mend their hive, but he didn't understand, nor did his driver. So the bees turned to James. His boiler was nice and warm. Buzz off, hissed James. One bee burnt his foot. Ooh, ah, phew, phew. The bee thought James had burnt him on purpose. So it stung James right back on the nose. Eee! Whistled James. He had had enough. So had his fireman and driver. They didn't notice till too late that they had left all their coaches behind. They tried everything to get rid of the bees. First, they spun on the turntable to no avail. They tried washing them off, but the bees clung harder to James's warm boiler. Then they tried smoking them off by going through a long tunnel. But still the bees wouldn't go away. It's no good, James, said his driver. We'll just have to go back to the orchard and fetch another hive. James's reply was drowned by the sound of buzzing. The vicar was waiting anxiously for James. When he arrived, the bees swarmed straight into their new home. Come on, James, said his driver. What you need now is a good hose down. Later that evening, James was resting in the shed when the vicar came to see him. Thank you for saving my bees, he said. It's a pity it's not Christmas, then we could call you James the Red-Nosed Engine. Everyone laughed, even James, but instead they decided to call James the Bee's Knees, which means they thought he was more useful than ever.
Hello everyone, Mr. Bluebell Engine here, and I'm going to be going over my 4 favorite things in Thomas and Friends, such as my favorite character, favorite song, favorite episode, and best of all, what Thomas and Friends means to me. Now, as you all already know, my favorite character is Stepney the Bluebell Engine, and the reason why is because I just love his stories. They are my favorite in the Railway series and the television series. And I really love his theme song, and plus, he's been through a lot in his life. Especially the real life Stepney. That engine has been through so much in his life, and now he's happily living on the Bluebell Railway. And that's just why I love Stepney, because I can relate to this character so much. He's been through a lot, and so have I a little bit. And that's why Stepney is my favorite, and he will always be. Now, my favorite song would probably have to be Snow. The reason why is because, well, since I live in Australia, and one of the many few parts in Australia that doesn't snow is where I live. And well, that's kind of a shame because when I was a little kid, I always wished that it would one day snow where I lived. But it never came true. So if I ever, go somewhere where it has a ton of snow, like Canada, then that would be like a dream come true because I would love to see snow and what it feels like. And to do all kinds of fun activities in the snow. And that would be just a dream come true. And that's why Snow is my favorite song, because that's how I imagine what snow would be like. Because that white fluffy stuff is a winter wonderland. Now, my favorite episode would probably have to be Ball Out. The reason why is because, well, I watched that episode so many times as a little kid. It's one of my favorite stories. The story is just fantastic, and it's really hilarious when D261 gets a bowler hat stuck in his Aaron tanks. And plus, he got what he deserved. My favorite part would definitely have to be when Stepney and Duck take the passenger train. Those two work really well together, and it shows how useful you can be when two engines work together, no matter how long or heavy the train is. And those two did an amazing job pulling that train. Now, what does Thomas and Friends mean to me? Well, I love everything in Thomas and Friends, mostly the classic series. I love everything about Thomas and Friends. The musics, the sets, the stories, the narrators. I love everything, pretty much. Thomas and Friends has everything in friendship, such as generosity, laughter, kindness, loyalty, honesty, and most of all, friendship. And especially teamwork as well. I love Thomas the Tank Engine ever since I was a little baby, and I still do to this day. I will always love Thomas the Tank Engine forever and always. Thank you all for listening, and enjoy the next episode.
Picture a land where the sky is so blue, a storybook land of wonder, a magical island just waiting for you. Island of Sodo will make your dreams come true. Imagine a place where the sun always smiles, the valleys are green as can be. The friends that you love are all waiting for you. Island of Sodo will make your dreams come true. Children, follow the dream to a land of make-believe. Magical land where dreams come true. Follow the road that leads to your dream, over the hills and mountains. Look for the skies with stars in their eyes. Island of Sodo will make your dreams come true. Children, follow the dream to a land of make-believe.
hello there. So, for this intermission, I will be telling you the following. So, my favorite character is this blue boy right here, number 2, Edward. Favorite song would be the season 6 one, Never Never Give Up. I don't know why, it just is. Favorite episode, Rusty and the Boulder. I absolutely love everything about that episode, seriously. I can watch it whenever because it's just that good. And what Thomas means to me, well, it's just a series I can just always watch. It's a series that gives me a lot of potential for videos. It's something I can just do. I don't feel like I have to, go through anything. And, the people who are in the Thomas community are really nice. And, I love most of the TV series in general. And, there's always some heart around it. But, yeah, that's what I feel about Thomas.
Gordon was feeling grumpy. This was making James cross. Why are you complaining all the time? Because I'm a big blue engine and I know everything. I shall complain whenever I want. You're just a small red engine with ideas above your station. I can't see any, said Percy. Where are they? Any what? Ideas above the station. The sky's empty. Like your smoke box, Percy, laughed James. But Gordon was still grumpy. One day I'll show you just what a big engine can really do. So what can a big engine really do? Not speak to silly little green engines for a start, replied Gordon. Then he puffed away. Later that day, Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. Gordon, you'll be making one stop today with an empty express to test our new station. You can make up time afterwards. Why can't Henry do it? He likes idling in stations. You will do as you are told. So Gordon did. But he was still unhappy, and he grew sick too. I just can't get up to speed, he moaned. It's time for your visit to the works. Your pipes are clogged, said the fireman. At last they approached the new station. Gordon was impressed, but his mood soon changed. In front of him was a blank wall and huge buffers. What a boring view. Important engines like me should have a panoramic view, where I can see people and people can see me. And he wheezed angrily. Gordon was happy when it was time to leave. Now you can really enjoy your run, as long as your pipes will let you, said his driver. Come on, I can go faster than this, huffed Gordon. Sick me never. But Gordon began to feel more and more feeble, and soon he came to a complete stop. What happened? His driver and fireman inspected him. Something's broken inside you, Gordon, said his fireman. Now you really will have to go to the works. Gordon was still fuming when James arrived to collect his coaches. Well, so much for knowing about everything. You got too puffed up in your boiler, so it serves you right. When Gordon returned from the works a few days later, he was still boasting. I am the finest engine on the island of Sodor, probably the finest in the world. Come on, Gordon. We're going to the official opening of the new station. Then there was trouble. As Gordon approached the new station, neither the driver nor fireman could apply his brakes. Something had jammed. The driver reduced steam, but Gordon was still going too fast. Help me, please. Well, Gordon, said Sir Topham Hatt, I knew you wanted a panoramic view, but this is not the way to achieve it. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. When Gordon was repaired again, he took Sir Topham Hatt to the new station for its second official opening. This time he arrived safely, and everyone clapped and cheered as he pulled in. Sir Topham Hatt spoke to him. "Your panoramic view is here to stay. I trust you will always see through it from the safety of your own rails." Gordon heartily agreed. One winter evening, Henry's driver said, "We'll be out early tomorrow. We've got to take the flying kipper. Don't tell Gordon, but I think if we pull the kipper nicely, Sir Topham Hatt will let us pull the express. The special coal they gave you is working well." "Hooray!" cried Henry. "That will be lovely." All kinds of ships use the harbor at the big station by the sea. There are passenger ships, cargo ships, and fishing boats also come here. They unload their fish on the quay. Some of it goes to shops in the town, and the rest in a special train to other places far away. This is the train the railwaymen call the Flying Kipper. Henry was ready at 5 o'clock. There was snow and frost. Men hustled and shouted, loading up the crates of fish. The last door banged, the guard showed his green lamp, and the Flying Kipper was ready to go. Come on, don't be silly, puffed Henry to the freight cars. The cars shuddered and groaned. Trickety-trock, all right. That's better, puffed Henry. Clouds of smoke and steam poured from his funnel into the cold air, and the fire's light shone brightly. Hurry, panted Henry. They were going well. The light grew better. Signal lights shone green as they passed. Then a yellow signal appeared ahead. His driver prepared to stop, but the home signal was down. All clear, Henry. Away we go. They couldn't know the switches from the main line to a siding were frozen, and the home signal should have been set at danger, but snow had forced it down. A freight train was waiting in the siding to let the Flying Kipper pass, and the driver and fireman were drinking cocoa in the caboose. "The Kipper is due," said the conductor. "Who cares?" said the fireman. "This is good cocoa." The driver got up. "Come on, fireman, back to our engine." They got out just in time. Henry's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but Henry lay dazed and surprised. Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. "The signal was down, sir," said Henry. "Cheer up, Henry. It wasn't your fault. Ice and snow caused the accident. I'm sending you to Crewe, a fine place for sick engines. They'll give you a new shape and a larger firebox. You'll feel a different engine, and you won't need special coal anymore. Won't that be nice?" "Yes, sir," said Henry, doubtfully. Henry liked being at Crewe, but was glad to come home. A crowd of people waited to see him arrive in his new shape. He looked so splendid and strong that they gave him 3 cheers. "Beep, beep," he whistled. "Thank you very much." I'm sorry to say that a lot of little children are often late for school because they wait to see Henry go by. They often see him pulling the express. He does it so well that Gordon is jealous. But that's another story. Bertie the bus was giving some visitors a tour of the island of Soda. It was their last afternoon, and Edward was preparing to take them to meet Bill and Ben. He found it hard to start the heavy train. "Did you see him straining?" asked Henry. "Positively painful," remarked James. "Just pathetic," grunted Gordon. "He should give up and be preserved before it's too late." "Shut up," burst out Duck. "You're all jealous. Edward's better than any of you." "You're right, Duck," said Boko. "Edward's old, but he'll surprise us all." "I've done it. We're off." "I've done it. We're off," said Edward as he finally puffed out of the station. Bill and Ben were delighted to see the visitors. They loved being photographed. Later, they took the party to the China Clay Works in a brake van special. Everyone had a splendid time, and the visitors were most impressed. Then Edward took the visitors home. On the way, the weather changed. Wind and rain buffeted Edward. His sanding gear failed, and his fireman rode in front, dropping sand on the rails by hand. Suddenly, Edward's wheels slipped fiercely, and with a shrieking crack, something broke. The crew inspected the damage. Repairs took some time. "One of your crank pins broke, Edward," said his driver. "We've taken your side rods off. Now you're like an old-fashioned engine. Can you get these people home? They must start back tonight." "I'll try, sir," promised Edward. Edward puffed and pulled his hardest, but his wheels kept slipping, and he could not start the heavy train. The passengers were anxious. The driver, fireman, and conductor went along the train, making adjustments between the coaches. "We've loosened the couplings, Edward. Now you can pick up your coaches one by one, just as you do with freight cars." "That'll be much easier," said Edward. "Come on," he puffed and moved cautiously forward. The first coach moving helped to start the second, and the second helped the third. "I've done it! I've done it!" puffed Edward. "Steady, boy," warned his driver. "Well done, boy. You've got them! You've got them!" And he listened happily to Edward's steady beat as he forged slowly but surely ahead. At last, battered, weary, but unbeaten, Edward steamed in. Henry was waiting for the visitors with the special train. Beep, beep. Sir Topham Hatt angrily pointed to the clock, but excited passengers cheered and thanked Edward, his driver, and fireman. Duck and Boko saw to it that Edward was left in peace. Gordon and James remained respectfully silent.
You know, I don't really have a favorite because all the episodes are pretty good. My favorite character is, of course, the number one himself, Thomas. I mean, there's other characters I like, but Thomas is the main one I like because he's obviously the main character of the show. My favorite song is Really Useful Engine because it's such an amazing song. What did Thomas mean to me? Well, It went like this. I loved Thomas when I was a kid, a baby, and it's what got me interested in loads of trains and so on. And then ever since then, I started loving the show, and even realizing it was based on actual British train events from Wilbur Daughtry, and I thought that was pretty cool. And it's what inspired me to make the railroad series I did a while back with American trains, like the Norfolk and Western Class J611, which I turned into Judy. And all in all, the show was pretty good, and I still love it to this day, alongside My Little Pony and so on.
Every day, Sir Topham Hatt came to the station to catch his train. "Hello," he always said to Thomas. "Don't let the silly freight cars tease you. Remember, you have an important job as a special helper in the train yard." There were lots of freight cars, and Thomas worked very hard pushing and pulling them into place. There was also a small coach and two strange things his driver called cranes. "That's the breakdown train," he told Thomas. "The cranes are for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and freight cars." One day, Thomas was in the yard. Suddenly, he heard an engine whistling. "Help! Help!" A freight train came rushing through much too fast. The engine was James, and he was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire. "They're pushing me! They're pushing me!" he panted. On!" laughed the freight cars, still whistling, "Help! Help!" Poor James disappeared. "I'd like to teach those freight cars a lesson," said Thomas the tank engine. Soon came the alarm. "James is off the line! The breakdown train! Quickly!" Thomas was coupled on, and off they went. Thomas worked his hardest. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he puffed. He wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it. "Bother those freight cars and their tricks. I hope poor James isn't hurt." James's driver and firemen were feeling him all over to see if he was hurt. "Never mind, James," they said. "It was those silly freight cars and your old wooden brakes that caused the accident." Thomas pushed the breakdown train alongside. Then he pulled away the unhurt freight cars. "Oh dear, oh dear," they groaned. Serves you right, puffed Thomas. He was hard at work, puffing backwards and forwards all afternoon. "This'll teach you a lesson, this'll teach you a lesson," he told the freight cars. And they answered, "Yes, it will, yes, it will." They left the broken cars. Then, with two cranes, they put James back on the rails. He tried to move, but he couldn't, so Thomas helped him back to the shed. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting anxiously for them. "Well, Thomas," he said, "I've heard all about it, and I'm very pleased with you. You're a really useful engine. James shall have some proper brakes and a new coat of paint, and you shall have a branch line all to yourself." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Thomas. Now Thomas is as happy as can be. He has a branch line and two coaches called Annie and Clarabelle. He puffs proudly backwards and forwards with them all day. He is never lonely. Edward and Henry stop quite often and tell him the news. Gordon is always in a hurry, but never forgets to say, "Boop, boop," And Thomas always whistles beep beep in return.
Well, there we go. Still those best stories. A lot of people did a great job on these remakes. The people that do these videos do a great job, and you can tell they have a passion for it. And I always have a passion as well, just doing videos while making Thomas reviews or whatever. I just have a fun time doing them, and it's amazing. I do really enjoy it. And to see all these people come together to make this, which was really fun, and it really shows how much this community, is awesome. I mean, yes, every community has its downfalls and stuff, but this community, it loves what this fandom, like, how do I describe it? The community loves itself. Like, we love our friends, we love the characters, we love our stories that we do. This fandom is just so embracive with love that it's amazing. It really shows how great of a fandom this is. Like those meetups, people have gotten married. There's people that have gone together. There's other people that have made really cool stuff. People didn't think they could make. Like, so many people have inspired me from a young age to where I am now. Thomas Road Railway, Enterprising Engine, Mr. Conductor Fan, Annie C, some of the original people from back in the early days, Leokin Video, Jasper Pie, or Train Lover 476, I forget his name. Jasper Pie, as he's known in the Brony fandom. There's Oliver and Blossom, or as people know him as the Devotionator. Just so many people have inspired me and many others to do these types of videos. And yeah, like, it may just be, pulling a train with a string, but you create stories and your own ideas, and it shows how creative you can be. And Thomas has definitely done that for a lot of people. I've been there wherever people needed someone just to make them smile, or to be creative, or just be awesome. This character and this fandom is something special. And I don't know what's in Thomas's future, or his fandom's future, but I do know this. Thomas and the fandom will live on. And I look forward to seeing all the adventures not only the character has, but the fandom in general. This fandom is something special. The same for the show and the characters themselves. And again, I look forward to seeing where they go to in the future. With that said, did you all enjoy this? And if so, well, I'm glad you did. With that said, I think it's fair we end this video not only with the credits, but one more song. With that said, everyone, take care. And remember,
little engines can do big things, especially when they have nice blue paint like me.
See you all next time.
Clap your hands. Stomp your feet. Across the land. To the beat. Sing it along with us. Let's set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. You can stay on the tracks and stand still all day, or you can keep chugging and get on your way. Talk with people you meet and learn something that's new. Make friends everywhere you go. They'll be there through and through. Let's go, go, go and set friendship in motion. Go, go, go. Let's go, go, go and show what good friends we can be. Let's give it a try. Come on. Let's go, 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 and we'll start a commotion. From ocean to ocean, set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. 'Cause there may be twists and turns on the tracks. Keep moving forward, no looking back. And then you'll see true friends will be there for you. 'Cause that's what friends do, yeah! Let's go, go, go and set friendship in motion. Go, go, go! Let's go, go, go and show what good friends we can be. Let's give it a try, come on! Let's go, go, go and we'll start a commotion. From ocean to ocean, set friendship in motion. motion. Let's set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. Let's go, 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 and set friendship in motion. Let's go, 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 and show what good friends we can be. Let's go, 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 and we'll start a commotion. From ocean to ocean, set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion. Come, set friendship in motion.